The dusty roads of Cedar Creek were always silent at dawn. A golden haze spread across endless fields of wheat, and the morning wind carried the smell of freshly cut hay. In this quiet corner of America, life seemed simple, almost forgotten by the rush of the modern world. At the heart of this countryside, tucked between the barns and the rolling acres, lived a young woman named Clara. To most who glanced her way, she was invisible. Just another farm girl in worn boots and a sun-bleached dress, hauling water buckets, fixing fences, and tending to chickens. She rarely spoke in class, rarely raised her voice in town. Everyone called her the quiet girl. And the quiet ones are often mistaken for weak. Clara wasn't weak, though. She carried the weight of her family farm after her father's passing, with only her aging mother to help her. She woke before sunrise, worked until her fingers bled, and carried a resilience that no one could see on the outside. But kids at school never noticed strength in silence. They only saw a target. Her silence became her curse. At Cedar Creek High, the halls were ruled by a group of teenagers who loved the sound of their own cruelty. Boys like Brett Miller, captain of the football team, tall and arrogant, the kind who wore his father's money like a badge of power. His friends, Kyle, Tanner, and Luke, followed him everywhere, laughing too loud, pushing too hard, never missing a chance to remind everyone who the real kings of the school were. And their favorite game, picking on Clara. She would walk into class with her worn-out books, sit in the back, and try to disappear. But Brett always found her. He'd kick the chair from under her when she tried to sit. He'd yank her braids and call her farm rat. His friends would moo like cows when she passed by, mocking her for smelling like the barn. The girls weren't kinder. Jealous cheerleaders who sneered at her second-hand dresses, whispering about how she couldn't afford makeup or branded shoes. Every day was a battlefield Clara never signed up for. But she never snapped back. She held her silence like armor. She thought if she ignored them it would all fade. But bullies don't fade. They grow bolder when you don't fight back. One Friday afternoon, when classes let out early, Clara stayed behind in the library to finish some homework. The building grew quiet, the sound of pages turning echoing in the empty space. She thought she was safe, hidden. But when she stepped outside, the bullies were waiting. Brett leaned against his shiny truck, tossing a football up and down, a smirk on his face. Well, look who finally crawled out of her barn, he mocked. Kyle stepped forward. Maybe she was milking cows too long. The boys erupted in laughter. Clara clutched her books tighter and tried to slip past. But Brett grabbed her arm. Not so fast. You think you can keep ignoring us? His grip tightened, his eyes filled with the thrill of domination. I'm just trying to go home, Clara whispered. Her soft voice only fueled their cruelty. Tanner snatched her bag and dumped it on the ground, her notebook scattering into the dirt. Luke picked one up and tore out the pages, laughing as the wind carried them away. Clara bent down quickly to gather her things, her heart pounding, her throat tight with the threat of tears. Brett crouched beside her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. You really think you're better than us? Walking around all quiet, all holy, like you don't care. You're nothing. Just a farm girl no one will ever remember. When she didn't respond, his smirk twisted darker. Tee her up, he ordered. At first, Clara thought he was joking. But then Kyle pulled a rough rope from the back of the truck. The boys dragged her across the field behind the school, ignoring her cries, ignoring her struggle. They shoved her against an old oak tree, its roots jutting from the ground like claws. Her wrists were bound cruelly behind the trunk, the rope biting into her skin. She shouted, she begged them to stop, but her voice only echoed against their laughter. Now you look like the little scarecrow you are, Tanner sneered. The boys pulled out their phones, recording her humiliation. They tossed straw around her, mooing and mocking, threatening to post the video online. The cheerleaders, who had followed to watch, snapped photos and laughed until their stomachs hurt. Clara's cheeks burned with shame. Tears streamed down her face, but she refused to scream. She refused to give them the satisfaction of breaking completely. Still, the humiliation was unbearable. For the first time, Clara felt the crushing weight of hopelessness. She thought of her mother, waiting at home, wondering why dinner hadn't started yet. She thought of her father, who had always told her, strength runs quiet, Clara. But never let anyone forget you have it. She thought of the one person who could save her if he knew, her husband. The town barely knew Clara was married. She had wed young, to a man who was rarely seen in Cedar Creek. They assumed he was some ordinary worker, maybe a truck driver. They never guessed the truth. They never imagined that behind Clara's quiet, humble life stood a man forged in the most dangerous places on earth. A man who lived in shadows, trained in silence, built for war, a Delta Force operator. With trembling hands, Clara shifted against the ropes, managing to slip one finger into the pocket of her dress where her old flip phone was hidden. The bullies were too busy laughing to notice. She couldn't dial, not with her hands tied, but she pressed one number. Just one. The phone clicked, it rang. And then she whispered with all the breath she had left, "Jamie's, I need you." A miles away, on a military base where men trained under the blistering sun, a phone buzzed. A soldier looked down, saw the name, Clara, flashing, and felt his chest tighten. James Carter wasn't just a soldier. He was one of the elite few who carried missions no one would ever hear about. Missions that decided wars before they began. Missions that required him to vanish, to become nothing but a ghost. But Clara's voice shattered that silence, and in that instant the Delta Force ghost knew his war had just come home.